Hi, this is Jordi V, and today I'm gonna show you how I make this dub reggae idea. So, if you are not familiar with the subgenre, dub music was created in the 60s in Jamaica, where sound engineers have been playing with reggae B-sides and instrumental and creating doubles or alternative version, generally by manipulating the original stems of the tracks and the instrumentals, and then creating some dark influenced ideas or tracks, basically by taking those stems and adding reverb, echo, and delay. So we will be trying, obviously the subgenre evaluated later and became its own subgenre and influenced a lot of other people to create some genius music. So with this track, I tried to recreate the original vibe of dub. So the basic concept is, instead of using stems or original instrumental of reggae music to create the initial idea and later manipulate it by adding effects, we will be using heavily some sample packs and my dub library in order to create the initial idea and later add effects to make it dubby, I guess, or to turn it into a dub track. So for this track, I started actually with this guitar lick. So let me solo it. I have this library of licks, of guitar licks, so called dubbed guitars. And let's listen to some of the example we have here. So we are in the key of A minor, guys. So these are some short licks that you can combine. Let me add, for instance, or an audio track here. You can combine some ideas in order to create your own. So let's say I like this lick and this one. I can chop it up, take this, have that initial scratch. So yeah, it's just as simple as that. I have an alternative idea and I can loop it, add some effects to it, etc. So let's back to our composition. I started with this lick and I added some EQ8 on it, and later I just bought this Arturia effects collection, which is amazing if you are looking for this type of sound. I have this Delay Eternity plugin. I added some ping pong lo-fi preset and I tweaked it a bit. You have a bunch of presets here, and as you might see here, you have some dub delays and some dub effects within the preset. So that's just huge for this type of tracks. So let's listen to what we have so far with the effects, the EQ8, and finally some pancaked in order to make the lick more stereo and have it panned from the left to the right. So yeah, just as that, we have created our first element. Later, I needed some steady element in order to make the track stand out and have a backbone for it. Generally, I will go with piano chords, but for this one, I've chosen some guitars. Again, the same principle. I have some guitar one-shots here. That I combined in order to create my initial rhythm. So as you might see here, I have some crackles and some one-shot chords within the key of A minor again, and I've created this loop. Again, I didn't add any reverb, delay, or echo for this one, since I wanted to be dry and I wanted to drive the track through. While I will be dubbing, I added some effects to the other elements. So I left it clean. I just added some EQ8 in order to cut the low frequencies and leave more room to the bass. Later, I've started with the bass. So if you are not a bass player and you are not familiar with reggae bass, all you have to do is maybe use loops, etc. But again, with loops, you can get creative and like, let's see, for instance, this loop, you can drag it here. I will show you some of the techniques in which you can create some effective bass line. So let's say we have this bass loop here. All you have to do is to listen. Sorry, let me first solo it. And treat it as some one shot. So let's create a variation on this loop here. So yeah, you get the idea. Maybe grab them or midi slice them, get them as some one shots, and yeah, play with it until you create something interesting. The basic idea behind bass guitar, if you know some music theory, so reggae bass players often use some pentatonic scale, so they are using 5 notes of the scale instead of 7, and mainly they are playing a variation around the first note, the third, and the fifth. So the initial idea is to come up with an interesting motif and later play with the notes. For my bass line, what I came up with is I started with this bass sample called 5. Bass 5, let's see, AM, U, bass. Let me look for it just to get the idea. So I started with this bass line, and luckily for me, I found some MIDI for it. So the MIDI is this one. And I started with the MIDI, but I found that I only like the first part of the MIDI track or the sample. So instead of playing the 8 bars, I've decided to loop it. So I looped this part and made it just two bar loop to have that repetitive element, since I'm not looking for my bass to have a lot of variation. I wanted some strong bass that will be driving the track while I make some variation with my melodic elements. Later, if you are familiar again with the music theory, as you might see here, we are in the key of A minor. So if I draw my scale here, so we are in the E minor, full step, I will go half step later. This is the pattern of the E minor scale. Full step, half step, and again full step and full step. So this is the notes that we are allowed to use within our scale. So if I click on fold, the bass line starts with the first note, then it goes to the third. As I said earlier, mainly is a variation on the third and the fifth, and later it goes to the fourth degree of our scale. And I didn't like that because I prefer my bass to go to the fifth. I want it to be kind of I guess you will be expected, and I want it to be kind of safe. That's the word. So with my bass line again, I looped the first 2 bars, and if we see here, I went from the first degree to the third degree to the fifth degree, but instead of playing my E2 here, I've dropped it 1 octave. So I just did that with my first half of the loop, and I did that also with my second half. So instead of having these, we have this bass part. As you might hear, the fifth sound amazing, since there is a special relationship between the first note and the third and the fifth. So while playing it also an octave lower, I have created some amazing low end. So just as simple as that, I've created my own bass pattern that I kept it looping throughout the track. Later, I added this preset on Serum called Rock Bass, from the Kashmir Music Symphony sample or preset pack. I also added some pitch MIDI effects from Ableton Live, and I'm playing it an octave lower. So instead of having our pattern playing on the A1 and A2, it will be playing on the A0 and A1. Later, I added this preset from effect from Arturia called More Bass, and we have an amazing preamp here. So I'll let you listen to the track without the preamp and with the preamp. So let's loop this, solo my bass, and let's get rid of the preamp. So yeah, the preamp make it more lively, make it more present within the mix. And yeah, just as simple as that, I've created my own bass line for this track. So we already have covered the first element, our chords here, and our bass. Let's move to our next element. This is a super simple effects, again from my dub library, and it's a siren, dub siren. Yeah, and I added some reverb, some EQ again to cut some of the low frequencies. And this is key for your tracks. If you are going for this style, maybe experiment a lot with your effects, with your sirens, maybe some crashes, some top vocals, and one shots to create that interesting feeling and keep it moving. Later, let's see what we have. So I also added another plug guitar, but it will be mainly playing at the end of each 8 bars. So let's listen to what we have. Let me solo this part. Yeah, perfect. I also added this plugin from Arturia, again from the FX collection, called Delay Tape, and I have it on ping pong delay. You can go with the Ableton Live ping pong delay. There is no difference, but the Arturia one is more organic and more gritty, and I'm looking for that sound. So later, let's move to this. This is a chord sample around A minor, and the same principle applies. So we have here a couple of chords. And originally it was playing within the 175, so I played it on half speed, and instead of having this, let me solo it. I'm having this. So if I click on double, yeah, it sounds more in key with my track, and it sounds better this way than played double speed. And if you are looking to more flexibility within your chords and sample and your creative process, I have a couple of suggestions for you. So what you can do is at the, sorry, I'm losing my thoughts here. As I said earlier, cut your samples or your loops into one shots. So I did that here, and I have a couple of one shots. So all you have to do is to click here and slice to MIDI, choose transients, and you will have basically each chord here. I also added some, let me move this here, some delay and some spring reverb, and let's see what we have as a result. So I have my Ableton Live push here, and I will be playing some variation on these chords. Let me solo it first. So yeah, just as simple as that, we have created our own instrument. This is basically all the chords possible within the A minor scale, and any one shot you will be playing, it will fit with your song. Obviously, you are not key bound here. If you have a song within G minor, let's say, all you have to do is to pick up a sample or a loop in G minor where you have a couple of chords, slice them, add your effects, and just as simple as that, you have your own instrument that you might be using within your compositions. Later, let's see what we have here. G basic break. No, this is actually a copy of my bassline, but instead of playing it with Serum, I have one shot. I'm not using it with this track, but just to show you that you are not forced, or you don't have to use some VSTs. You can use some one shots for your bass. So let's listen to this variation on the bass. And yeah, I think it sounds amazing also. The next element we have is this horn sample. Again, this is a whole complete other loop. but instead of playing the loop, I treat it as a one-shot sample, and I added a bunch of effects. Since I'm not looking into a lead part, I'm just spicing my composition with some elements. So let's see what we have here. Actually, I'm not using any effects with this, so maybe let's add some EQ8. Let's add some reverb. And maybe some ping pong delay, and let's see what we can come up with. So yeah, just as simple as that, you can create some texture, some ear candy, I guess, to your track. Later we have this vocal sample. Again, I added some spring reverb from the Arturia plugin here. I have it on the King Tubby at the control, which is basically super dubby sound. And later we have our delay plugin again, delay eternity from Arturia. So let's listen to what we have. Again, we have a vocal sample here or loop. I shopped it around. I played just a slice or a small element of it, since I'm not looking again for any particular sound or lead sound. I'm just adding a couple of elements parsed throughout the composition in order to create the interest and keep people listening. Later, we have again another siren here. I only added some EQ8. And here we have this stop for the drums. So we have this loop. Let's solo it. This is just some percussion that we are adding, and also some texture here to make it more granular. This is some treated crashes that will add a texture to our track. And yeah. Later, let's move to the drums. So I'm going for that step-a kind of classic feeling with this track. So I added my snare on the third beat of each bar. And let's listen to what we have here. As you might hear, there is some delay within the original sample, also some reverb. I kept it that way. If you are looking into a more tight feeling, maybe you want to play with the transient here and the fades, cut some of that delay, and you will have a more choppy sound. Yeah, just as simple as that. You can tweak it to your own preferences. Later, we don't necessarily have anything within this track. Let's move to our kick. Again, I'm going for that step-a feeling, so I have my 4 on the floor kind of classic pattern here, and I only playing this kick sample, no processing so far. I might add some processing later, but for now I kept it simple. Later, I have this hi-hats pattern that I played with my Ableton Live Push, and I'll let you listen to it. I only added some EQ8. So let's solo it. So yeah, you only need to add some samples, some variation, add some groove later to your hi-hats to make them more organic and more human. In this case, I think I have this roots down groove. If I apply it or click on commit, as you might see here, there is some variation. It's not totally quantized, which adds to the organic feeling of the track. Finally, we have this top percussion element again to create some of that gritty feeling and classic reggae sound. So let's listen to what we have here. Let's play it with the hi-hats. Add the kick and the snares. So yeah, and just as simple as that, we have created our initial idea for this dub track. And yeah, let's listen to it again before wrapping it this tutorial up. Let me unsolo this. Yeah, I totally skipped this part. So finally, I forgot about this melodica sample. Finally, we have this melodica sample here. Again, some reverb, some delay, some other delay part here with the default preset to create that feeling. And let's re-listen to the sample on solo. For this one, no processing, just keep the sample as it is. So yeah, what I highly recommend with this subgenre before leaving this tutorial is to create your own samples, to create your own database that you might be using throughout your career if you are looking to make this kind of track. So thank you for watching. I hope I explained some of these parts and you have an idea on how to go about to create your dub track. And stick around, I might be going to arrange this track and complete it now. So if you are interested in just the basic idea, here it is. But if you want to see some tips and tricks on how to arrange your track, how to master it, etc., maybe stick to the end of the tutorial. Again, thank you for watching and make sure to subscribe to my channel for this type of tutorial. I will be making some jungle, some drums and bass tutorials in the future. So if you like these, please make sure to you subscribe to my channel for future tutorials. Thank you for watching. Peace.
Rastafari. Rastafari. Rastafari.